Welcome back to the Battle Belongs podcast. Of course, your hosts, Coleton Furlow, PJ Cuba. And today we have a special guest, another dear friend of mine, somebody that has become yet another mentor in my life, somebody that wise beyond his years. And Alex Smith from Taylor's First Baptist and First College, the college pastor up there, but also a collegiate leader for the state of South Carolina when it comes to college ministry. Dear friend, great father, phenomenal husband, faithful pastor. I can go on and on. Jack of all trades, to be honest with you. You literally, I don't know if there's anything that you wouldn't at least try to do. And so give us like a 30-second spill of who Alex is.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here and to chat about some of these things. For me, man, I'm South Carolinian and I've been here all my life. I love traveling. I really enjoy fly fishing, even though I'm terrible at it. And got a couple kids, couple chickens, a couple rabbits. I mean, you name it. Kind of the micro homesteading thing. We're into that,
This is gonna be me.
So just we can go many different, if you will, rabbit trails if we need to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, man, I love it. Just love college young adults, and yeah, man, I love networking and doing stuff like this. So this is fun to be here.
My first question is, do you drink raw milk?
We do drink raw milk all the time. It's
Yes.
not always in our refrigerator, but we are fans of raw milk for sure.
When I heard the chickens and like homesteading, I was like, this guy drinks raw milk.
You
So
know,
I'm about ready to start my own like little journey down that road.
Yeah,
Um,
chickens, like raw milk or, really goat cheese, raw
Yeah.
milk or chickens are like the gateway drug for homesteading. Like that's what gets you in, and then
I
it takes some
love it.
time, but then you start figuring out ways to make that stuff happen. So it's pretty
You
fun.
also are a huge proponent of Vienna sausages.
Dude, if I could be sponsored by Vienna sausage companies, I
His
would take it.
NIL deal.
Yeah, I would definitely take it. I love smoking barbecue. I love cooking, and
Yeah.
my like snack while I'm cooking is always Vienna sausage or something like that. So,
It's
in
gracious.
fact, I got 2
Yeah.
cases of those for my birthday this year from people. So, like from Sam's, like the case of them. And so,
Oh my goodness.
and I say this is going to probably just make a lot of your viewers and listeners just puke. But I'm like, if you're not slurping, you're not living. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So.
Dude, yeah, I remember you posted that on your story. I was like,
Dude, I
oh,
got so much feedback on that when I posted that. It was hilarious.
I liked you with the raw milk and the homesteading, and then
Yeah,
you
hey, that's
lost
fair.
me. You
That's
lost me
he
there.
fair.
also is. I think Waffle House would definitely be Taylor's college sponsored,
Dude,
easily.
I did call the Waffle House corporate to get the Waffle House truck to come to TRB this past year, and it was out of their zone. They were willing to like bring it, but it was out of the zone. And
It's a must for next year.
dude, can't imagine. But yeah, we're going to Waffle House tomorrow night after the gathering, so pretty pumped.
Yep.
So,
Teach TRB is just Teach Reach Beach, which is part of the networking that you're talking about. It was literally, ironically, like Brett, who lives in Tennessee, like when I moved here, he was like, "You need to get in contact with Alex. He's up in the upstate," and I did. I drove up there, went to one of your services, kind of watched how things were done. And what I love about our state is the networking that's taking place.
okay.
We have cohorts that are starting to be formulated throughout the entire state and whatnot. And you're a huge like advocate for it. Like I think I want to say the upstate was the one that started it, if I'm not wrong. And just getting to connect that way, he then we were just on the phone and he kind of said, "What if we were able to do something together and evangelize and reach coastal Carolina?" And so he helped me get my feet off the ground at college ministry down here in Myrtle Beach, which is now leading to a yearly routine where our ministries, along with Todd at Spartanburg First Baptist and Greer First Baptist with JG, all coming together along with other churches in both South and North Carolina. Really cool evangelism, getting to share the gospel, but also equipping students for the work of ministry. And so, man, like you have got your hands full. You are a busy guy, but you are all gas, no brakes, you always say. And I do want to touch on that real quick. Is there a balance to every Christian, or is this categorized? Like, is this something that every single Christian should uphold, or is it for specific believers, maybe pastors, leaders, etc.? Can you just touch on what that means?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think going back to the networking piece, man, I'm a big proponent of like I have this information and it's not mine. You know, how do we grow this stuff together? So when you reached out and I was like, hey, why don't if your pastor will let you come up and see, we got one more left, you know, in May, like come see it if you want to, and then that led to coming down for a site visit in June. That's where we met some BCM guys, and then man, we TRB unfolded after that. We just got an idea, and I was like, hey, I got some other guys who are just crazy enough to do some stuff too. If you're in, if you'll have us. And I think literally in a matter of, it was like 46 days, we put the whole thing together and had just like 75 people, college
awesome,
students,
man.
which is, I mean, it's just a testament that young adults are hungry to share the word if they're taught how to share the word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like, I love that. But man, doing a lot of things, irons in the fire, as people say. Yeah, I love that. For me, that fills me to be doing a lot of different pieces. And I think what a lot of people don't see is that I rest behind the scenes in different ways. Like on social media, I'm posting doing this or whatever. But man, I love riding in the Jeep and four-wheeling and just being outside and just sitting and listening to the Lord. And like I carve that into my week that no one ever sees. And so I think having those moments where you are all gas, no brake looks very different for everybody else. You know, for me, it does look like I'm doing all these things, working for the state of South Carolina and the South Carolina Baptist Convention with cohort development, working with my church here with college and young adult ministry, and even some men's ministry stuff, and now some disaster cleanup things that we do, and helping out with leadership development in other areas. And man, just I love it. Like it's awesome for me. And like I make sure to make time with my family where we go out and do stuff too together, where I'm teaching. I mean, you follow me on Instagram, we're always riding four-wheelers or doing stuff with the chickens and stuff like that. Like that's all like intentional. And so I think for some people, they're built that way. I know Travis Agnew is another one who's that way. He just has a lot of different hands and a lot of different things because he's built that way. And I think that can come across intimidating for some people because like, man, I can't do all this stuff because I get exhausted doing serving on Sundays. That's fine. That's your gas. That's your gas, and you know your break too. You know, I do think there's something to be said about pushing ourselves a little bit because the Lord gives us capacity to do some really great things to make his name great. But I do think there's some wisdom in scaling back to and say, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Or being kind with just saying no, you know, and that's good. That was a hot topic about 6 or 7 years ago of like how to say no appropriately. And like, I think it's still very relevant, but I think we need to push ourselves a little bit to not just do more, because I'm not looking for more things to do. I'm looking for a deeper impact on the things that I am doing, you know? And so like for everybody, that looks different for different people. For stay-at-home moms, that looks completely different than someone who is working full-time. Maybe more, maybe less. And I think people's, in this day and age, we're in a conversation where mental health takes front stage. And so like knowing your anxious levels and your capacities and stuff, and I think that's very appropriate to pull all that into context, because maybe you have one minister across town who does all of these things and another minister who seems like it's barely getting by, you know, or business coach or whatever it may be. I'm just using ministry because that's what we're in. But man, maybe it's all this person has capacity for, and that's cool. That's fine. I think that then comes into, okay, well, how do you build your team around you a little bit? Because for the person who does a lot of things like me, it seems like, well, Alex will never delegate that. He never asks people to do that kind of stuff. But the reality is I had to learn that the hard way a couple of years ago to finally be like, okay, I need to let people in, because if I want to continue this speed, then I need to start empowering people to take this stuff and run it for themselves. I read a great book this year. It's called Hero Maker. It's not a new book by any means. It's a little bit older, maybe a couple years older, but it talks just about that, like delegating, not just out of you do this, but I see this ability in you, take it, run with it, and kind of building that. So that goes on both ends, but it's powerful, man, to be able to like that phrase, all gas, no brake, because just watching the Lord work is awesome, for that. Um, and I think too, all gas, no brake doesn't mean you don't let off the gas some for some turns and squiggly roads and stuff like that, for sure. So it's not just pedal to the metal as it sounds all the time.
Yeah.
Because I like to all gas, no brake too, even in my rest time when I'm doing stuff on my own. It's fun.
Yeah.
Can we talk about TRB for a second? So going into it, I didn't know that it was like something y'all just came up with and put together. I thought it was like something that's been around for years, and it seemed like it flowed well as like something that's been happening for years. So I loved
That's
it.
good.
So for those who have no idea what it is, can you first explain like what it is, and then also why you felt like called to like be a part of something like that and starting that for people in the college age here in South Carolina?
Absolutely. And now North Carolina, we got Marco and the crew up in
Yep.
North
Oh,
Carolina who
right.
joined
Yeah, yeah.
us, which is awesome. Um, so yeah, I've been at Taylor's as of recording this 6 years, almost 7 years, in collegiate capacity to some level. Part-time, I was bivocational for a number of years, and then was moved into a full-time role. And I had not done a fall retreat. I was a youth pastor years ago, and we used to do the typical fall retreats and summer camps. But something about collegiate level fall retreats, I was like, I don't want to just give a time away. One, they're expensive to do. And two, it's hard for them to get off work. It's hard for them to set aside room from their schedule. So I was like, I don't want to combat with that or compete with that. And three, I don't know. I'm just so sick of people going to be fed, and nothing ever happening, really, if I'm being completely honest. And I guess that's a testament to PJ can attest that I just kind of tell it like it is. I try not to
Yep.
sugarcoat things, just right in the middle. And so I just didn't want people to come have another frou-frou weekend where they just had some good worship and that was it. I wanted something to be deep impact. PJ and our paths cross, and Todd, who's a good friend of mine, and JG, who's also another good friend of mine, we started talking about this retreat for college students, or we had this idea, and I said, "Hey guys, I got an idea. What if we do something like this? If your leaderships would be okay with it?" Because I always try to, like, anything we do in our college ministry, I want to make sure it upholds the mission, vision, and value of our church. What we're doing, I never want to kind of be seen as sideways for doing that. So this we try to generate ascending culture in our college ministry. So this goes right along with it. And I was explaining, I was like, I have this idea to do a retreat with other college students, but I want to do it near or on a college campus so that we can have worship time and speaking time, preaching time. I said, but I want these students to reach their own. I want college students to reach college students. Think of it like a beach retreat over spring break, if you will. I said, but I don't want to preach every service because I don't want to be the me show. I don't want PJ to preach every service. Like, I'd love for all four of us to each take a session. So because we see each other on Instagram all the time and our one-liners or whatever else. So like, I'd love to sit under y'all's teaching for once, and just share that. So that led from one thing to another. And then it was like, you know what? What if we did an evangelism piece on that college campus, and then whoever we talk to, we can have a host church who it acts as our base camp, if you will. And that way on Saturday, when we evangelize, whoever we come in contact with, either prayer or salvation, we can connect them straight to that local church. And so the first year just happened to be Langston, who was the home church for us, as y'all acted as host. And we came down to Coastal, had an incredible time. We stayed at a retreat center down that way. And it was just the rain through some issues in our plans that day, but I think that worked out for the better because it was a limited time where we had service in the morning, and it was intentional time of breakouts, which was fun. I was like, I want to equip these students while they're here. And then there was time to train them on how to share the gospel. And then it's like, oh, by the way, we're going right now. We're not giving you an option. I was told a long time ago, don't let an option be an option. And so it's just like, whether that's positive or negative, And so, and everybody knew that going into it, that was going to be part of the retreat. And so I just hearing the testimonies on the way back on the bus, and just that night, I was nervous. I've never done this. I've been a Christian for this long, but I did. And then we did. And then we prayed, or we had this conversation. I was like, praise the Lord, And so then we got to worship with you all at Langston on Sunday. So that was another big portion of what I desired in a college trip, is to like pair with a local church, but then also be intentional with looking at how can we worship with that church too.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I think I lost you for a second. Sorry.
Wow.
My back. Am I there? Sorry.
There he is.
My phone went crazy.
Yeah, I think we lost you for a second.
Yeah,
It's good.
sorry about
We can
that.
edit.
I tapped something and it went crazy.
It's all
But
good.
but on that note, like taking a retreat where we can not only evangelize and pair them with a local church, but worship with that local church on a Sunday. And we were able to do that with Langston that Sunday. That was a great opportunity to have all of our college students together for the weekend, but then worship together, evangelize together, and point them to a local church together, and then worship at that local church together. And so we kind of circled back after that trip. I was like, hey, do we do it again? And I think all signs pointed yes. And so we did. We did it in Charleston this past year. And Fort Johnson was a great church host for that. Marty and the pastor there did a great job at hosting us. And I loved it. It was so great. We're already talking about plans of like if we do it again, how we would change it even just keep critiquing it a little bit more to get it well. So I'm glad it seemed like it flowed well. Because I think that's the thing, how college ministry is so different than student ministry or any other ministry. It's as laid back as any ministry can be. And so it's just kind of go with the flow. But at the same time, it's so intentional with even that laid back piece that we're here to make gospel impact, generational impact. So
Yeah, I think that was my favorite. I absolutely love I guess the improvements from year 1 to year 2. I think for me the first year, even as a pastor, I'm young, but at the same time I was the one that made excuses for why I didn't evangelize a certain way or why I didn't evangelize at all. And what TRB really teaches for any college student or any person involved is the fact that we're all disciple makers and we're all called to be disciples who make disciples, and at the same time we're all called to be evangelists. And there's no you don't have to go to school to understand the gospel makes an impact, and that you have the gift to do it. And I love, somebody recently said it, that introverts are the best ones to evangelize because they are relying solely on the Holy Spirit. I think and it's just it's so real, because we can make all the excuses, but then when you do it, you're kind of like, man, I'm that was cool. And so just empowering college students, like you said, was such an impact, but also it fuels our ministries, because they see local churches working together, but also that, hey, I'm not going to tell you to do something that I'm not going to do first as well. And so just coming together, man, I can't wait for next year. And I just love it. It just goes to show, sometimes the idea that you're thinking in your head, just do it. Just give it a shot. And if it fails, it fails. You improve on it. And then if it succeeds, you continue to build off of it.
Yeah, and I think that's so important too, is to look at, because people are so afraid to fail. And to me, failing is learning. If I take something away from it, if I fail and don't do anything, then man, that's a loss, for everybody that's involved. But if I fail at something, but I can take some feedback and learn and grow from that, especially in ministry, what a safe place to do that. It just kind of growing with that is really powerful to see, and to not be overly critical, but to be strategic in what we're doing. We already talked about, hey, we need to cut some stuff from this past year and add this instead, type thing. So yeah, I love that. And I think to that point too, is that TRB serves a need. We have something called Converge in the spring, or February, January every year, which is, I would consider, an equipping conference. So you go to learn and to gain and to find application, meet other people in the state, and then go back to your campus and apply. And then this is more of an evangelism or weekend conference, if you will. So you have an equipping and evangelistic style that now you're getting both in 1 year, which is the other kind of reason why we push towards that.
Yeah. Hold on. Last thing about TRB, and then we can move on to whatever else we want to talk about. The whole failure thing and evangelizing out there was the thing that I was most terrified about. Yeah. And I think a lot of people there were kind of nervous about doing it, not knowing how to talk to people, not knowing how to bring it up. And that was kind of my thing was, I do man on the street interviews for a living. That's part of my job. I work in politics. So it's easy for me to go out there and talk about the news of the day to someone randomly on the street. But I felt so convicted about not being able to, in air quotes, just walk up to someone and start talking about the gospel. So I walked around for like 30 minutes, and like I was waiting for like being pulled to someone, and it just wasn't happening. But then I also had my camera down there and my microphone, and I was like, while I'm here, I'm going to do some man on the street. It was kind of like a more selfish thing for work. But when I started to do like the man on the street in politics, it led to gospel conversations, because everything that I do in politics, like this podcast started out in my workplace. And it was just kind of trying to bring like Christianity into politics and how politics should align with our biblical values and things like that. But when I started talking about politics, it was leading to the gospel conversations, because I was talking about culture, I was talking about abortion, and then we got into faith-based topics regarding that. So then I was like feeling more empowered and motivated. So last question on like this whole topic: how would you encourage someone who is nervous about sharing the gospel to just anyone on the street, or even someone that they know, to just be able to do it confidently and not be scared of the outcome?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And I think that's a question of the day, if you will, for not just this generation, as everybody wants to put on, but like, and for adults, senior adults, they're not doing this either, right? And that's a collective statement or assumptive statement. But the biggest encouragement, I would say, is find someone who knows how to do it and does it regularly, and join them. We have something in our church called Time in the Harvest that happens on Thursdays, and they go out to our community and do what we do at TRB. And there's several college students who participate in that every week. And so I'm not saying you have to go be a part of a program that does something like that, but connecting. I think that's why the body of Christ is so important, to be plugged into a church. It's because where you're finding and seeing those types of people be like, I cannot do that, but I can walk with them and listen, and I can learn that way, so that then I can be empowered to do that too. And I think don't overlook the power of prayer. Lord, I struggle with this, speaking of whatever, or nervousness or whatever it may be. God, would you somehow do a work in me? I don't know what that looks like. And you would be so surprised that even like for your example, something you're passionate about and you're good and gifted with is politics, but yet the Lord kind of orchestrates the conversation to turn ever so slightly. So I tell people like, hey, where's your mind at in this whole thing? Is your mind to flee and just not make eye contact with anybody? It's like when a professor asks a question, you just kind of keep your head down, because if you make eye contact, or if you ask a student to pray and they make eye contact, you ask that person. But where's your mind at? Having the mindset of, all right, Lord, I don't know how to start it, but if you'll start it, I'll finish it, type thing. So you would be so amazed and just kind of encouraged and I had a conversation with a guy. I just recently joined a different gym in our area, and I let him talk through all his spiel and all his stuff. And I said, hey, my opening line to anybody when I share the gospel is, hey, where's home for you? Not where you from, but where's home for you? Because there's two different answers to that typically. Now in the South, most of us grow up in a small town, and that's where we stay sometimes. But where's home for you, and where are you from? They moved down. I was like, did you go to school? He told me he went to a small Christian university. I was like, man, that's great. And do you go to church anywhere? Well, no. And then we started talking. It was just amazing how I was just quiet. And I wasn't, evangelism is not this overbearing thing. It's not a burden. It's a joy. And I think we have to shape our minds and teach the culture around us that evangelism is a joy to take part in. Find those people who are good at that. Follow them. Because I guarantee you they're not going to say, no, you can't come with me, right? Because that would be unbiblical, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, is in your mind, too, is kind of don't lose the game before you even started. And if I could use the word game for that, you know what I'm saying? But I think that's huge,
That's good.
and just let them, what are you passionate about? What are your hobbies, skills, gifts, abilities? All right, start talking about that. And then let the Lord just weave it all the way through,
Yeah.
What would you say to the person, and this is a question I think I get often, and I don't always know the answer to. There are people out there that say, okay, yes, you're teaching us to be equipped for the work of ministry, but you're basically a paid Christian as a pastor. What would you say to a person that says, what does Alex do on a day in and day out basis? Like, does he just have freedom to run around and do whatever he wants? Does he just pray in his office and prepare for Wednesdays? Like, what would you want people to know about pastors and those in ministry that they probably don't know in our context today?
Because PJ does nothing. He just sits there and does a podcast and makes
And
by,
collects helmets.
Yeah.
basically.
Hey, don't diss that.
So the question is, what do I want people to know, like behind
Yeah, I
the
guess
scenes,
so. Like there's a false
a
is it
misnomer?
dichotomy? Yeah, like of like what we do. And people always ask me like, "Hey, what'd you do today?" And I'm like, to be honest with you, like you're just gonna have to come to work with me and
Mhm.
kind of see for yourself. But
Yeah.
because it's different, and like it's one of those things. Like I want to like there's rhythms that we have, but at the same time, if you try to create a 9 to 5 in ministry, it's never gonna work.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I think there's those that have gone before us and are out there now that have given a reason for people to ask that question.
Yeah.
Because there have been the 9 to 5 minister who clocks out, who doesn't do the extra, or who is always at conferences or gallivanting or networking or whatever else too, right? And
Yep.
so I think that gives some people a reason to ask that, well, you're a paid pastor. What does that even mean? Well, some days it means I'm teaching. Some days it means I'm preparing in my office, but most days it means I'm answering text, I'm developing a social media post, and then I'm going back to this coffee shop that I'm supposed to meet this student at, and then I'm meeting somebody else up at 8:30 that night for premarital counseling for them and their future spouse, and then I get to spend time with my family if they haven't gone to bed already. Then I wake up early, go work out with some guys that I know from church here and there, and then I come in, take my kids to school, and then I actually go back to work. And very intentional to have time that we have every Monday and Tuesday of these rhythmic staff meetings that we're in for a couple hours, some of them. And then from there, sometimes I eat lunch. Sometimes I just say I'm fasting and that's it, and then continue on. I'll drive up to campus. That's a 20-minute drive for me. So I'll drive up to campus on Wednesdays. Not as much this semester as I typically have done. And then just I'm a real big proponent of being a pastor of presence. So I want to be where my people are, but also I got to be a pastor of prayer too, because I can't preach on the stage if I'm not starting in the prayer closet. And so I do spend time in my office praying, or I do, like, I've got a state park pass. South Carolina has those where it's like you pay it once and then you get into all the parks. Paris Mountain State Park has a awesome little picnic shelter. That's where I go spend my solo time, and I'm prepping. I try to be intentional with the word. Or there's a really awesome hotel in Greenville called the Grand Bohemian, and they have it's free to go in there to their lobby, and their back porch overlooks one of the waterfalls. And like today, I was posted up there for an hour and a half, focusing on what does the Lord have me preach on next semester for Wednesday nights. And then I got 2 phone calls while I was there about parents in crisis, if you will, with their kid. And so now then I called. I mean, it's crazy. Like, just I would say the bulk of this semester of my job has been counseling this semester. It's crazy. From catering to counseling, I think is the way I would put it. Food to food physically to food emotionally, and so it's easy though. I'll be honest, like, it's easy to promote that we don't do a whole lot of stuff, that we're having fun and doing this stuff. Because our social media posts, what we choose to put on social media for those that are on it, only shows the highlights. Why would we dare show the hard things, right? That's the vanity part, right? Why would we do that? Well, we're not vulnerable enough to do that, right? And I think we live in an age where everything is twisted too, right? So people's going to take that and run with it. So you have to be appropriate with what you post. But I do think it comes down to, we only post the fun things. I'm only posting about me eating Vienna sausages on my motorcycle somewhere, or whatever. It's like that. But no, man, I don't know if that answers it, but I think a lot of people do think, well, you just play golf and preach, right? Well, yeah, once a year, right? And then after that, like, because I like to ask people too, like, I don't get that question often. I think because I do so much, that's just random stuff. But like, I think to asking people, what do you think I do? And it reminds me, I don't know if you've ever watched Friends, but it reminds me when they asked Chandler, like, Chandler, what do you do? and then they have the whole like game of what it is. But man, I think that's something I've seen over the past couple of years. I've tried to be, and I really had a hard time with this of like, do I promote myself and how I do things? And then I was like, I'm not doing it for pride. I'm just doing it for awareness. And so I started putting sticky notes on my door when I leave. Hey, headed to Furman, headed to North Greenville, headed to Sam's to pick up supplies. So people like, okay, he's doing stuff, right? But also on social media, like posting with the hurricane come through, we're cutting up more chainsaw, we're cutting up more trees, right? We're doing these things, like all that goes into it. So I think there is something to be said about on the social media side, like promoting that stuff and then being around the right people, man, and entertain the correct conversations. When people start talking stuff like that, chances are they're not truly a member of your church. They're probably not giving, and they've got some grudge with somebody else that they're just trying to get some fuel for, if I'm being honest, right? And so I think just kind of shutting that down, it's like, wow, you're welcome to come hang out for a day if you'd like to. It's pretty fun, but it's get a good night's rest. Because I sure didn't.
Yeah, I never really understood like what all goes into like the pastoral roles until I start coming here and being basically attached to your hip 24/7. But like you're constantly doing something. Pastor B's constantly doing something, and I don't want to compare being a pastor at all to working in politics, but it's kind of like a 24/7 job, because in politics there's always something happening, breaking news or something. So it could be 1 a.m. I get a call and have to do like some online work. With you, someone could be in crisis and call you at 2 a.m. and need someone to talk to, someone to pray with. So it's not always a 9 to 5 thing. Where
it just reminds me, this guy was going on a date with a girl and
got
shot that night, and he had to go take her.
My first official date, I had to leave the date to go work because the president was shot. But like things like that, like something's always coming up. So it's not this like set 9 to 5 thing that something's always happening. You brought up social media. I want to ask a question on that. Social media can be used as a great tool to spread the word, share the good news, like the podcast. We talk about different stories. We share people's stories and how God has just used them to be, a disciple, use their story to help other people. But it's also like a very damaging thing in society right now. So what is your take on like how much our generation should be using social media? How should they navigate using it? What they should be doing to avoid the negative effects of it, and how it can be used in a good manner and light?
I think it's a big question.
It's kind of loaded.
And it is, but that's okay. I'm in ministry. I'm used to it. I mean, to be honest, I think it goes back to how many irons in the fire are you willing to have? Why do you have it and what do you need it for? Right. And so I think kind of holding into that idea, because I mean, it's something that I feel the dopamine kicks when you see the likes go up or your reel is finally gaining some traction on something. It's fun to see that. To me, it's a puzzle. Like I see it different than other people do, but I'm like, ooh, what can I do strategically? Like, BJ, I don't know if you saw it, but like my live updates during the hurricane, how the satire I was putting out, like it was just hilarious. It was so funny, but it like kept fueling me to do more. And so finally I was like, all right, I gotta chill out a little bit on this. And so, but even that, like, I think social media gets a bad rep because I don't think it's the media, it's the social media platforms itself. It's how we utilize it or how we use it or don't use it type thing. And so I'm giving a talk on this social media and like collegiate ministry in a couple months, and something like I'm talking about is like, it's not just a bulletin board. Like you have it, and remember in elementary school where like there'd just be these bulletin boards with just things on. It's just some churches just post just their facts or whatever's coming down the line, and that's fine. Those definitely should be posted. But like using social media to your advantage to leverage, maybe it's your brand, your personality, your family, or ultimately the Lord and what you do and how you do it, right? And so like taking opportunities to use it and leverage it, and not just to be doom scrolling on stuff like that too, because I think addiction, even to that point, becomes gluttonous of what we're seeing with our eyes and how we're feeding that habit. And I almost got like cut off twice today, and it happens every day to everybody just about now, with people with their phones in their hand, or the whole like window holder, but it's like got a big screen TV on it almost. I'm just like, how is this even? And cops are just driving by because it's just part of our society now. It's just like we have become so glued to the screen because we've allowed that to be the case. It's the same thing with trans fats or oils or anything else you want to talk about, right? We allow these things to creep in. What did I say earlier? You can't let an option be an option. And so I think having the end game in mind, like sharing the gospel, why do I have this? And why am I withholding this from my child? If I'm going to withhold it from my child, why do I even have this, right? Now, I think there needs to be some ramification or like some parameters for your children to be on social media for sure. I'm not saying that, that just free reign, because there is an evil world out there. And I think it's seen in a lot of different ways. Social media is one of those, but textbooks are another way, so we can't overlook what's actually being said in the room, or Chromebooks, that are being used in classrooms. And I'm saying that because I have elementary age children, but also just YouTube and kids who are just doom scrolling on the Roku device, right? Too, just watching one thing after the other. So I think it's a fine line as a parent, as an individual, as a husband, as a ministry leader. We all have reputations at stake. And so being intentional with what I'm doing with it and how I'm using it, how am I leveraging it, or is it using me and leveraging me, and just being wise with that. Because college ministry, man, we've had several people over the past 6 years. We probably had a total of about 20 to 30 people come to our college ministry because they found us on Instagram in the area. So it works, right? It's just a matter of what you do and how you do it. I just think too, it's important to promote who you are really as a ministry, and not putting some random videos and images of stuff that doesn't mimic who your ministry really is too. Being authentic with it is huge.
I want to kind of, do you have any other, okay. I want to end it here, man. We're both in college ministry. I want you to give your why, first of all, of why this ministry, why this specific age group, the impact that it has, and because honestly, we know we have college students who are broke. They're not going to be the biggest tithers in the local church. They are, but there is something about them.
Wait, they do that?
I know Coleton mentioned, I think last week, about how this is the least religious / Christian generation. Yet at the same time, it seems to be the one that wants to make the most impact on the world. They are the ones that when they get into these jobs at these schools, they want to make a difference. And so for college ministry, A, what's your why? And B, what would you want to say to everybody about college students?
Man, yeah, I think my why for why am I in this area of ministry is the one that pays the most, right? I'm just kidding.
That's why PJ does it.
False.
Yeah, it's why we do it, man. We're drawing them to South Carolina, and just it works, right?
It just hit in my bank account, actually.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, okay, there's several. There's some surface level whys, and there's some deeper whys. So I'm gonna start with the surface level ones. I'll just be real. One, I get along with this age bracket much better than I do with middle schoolers, if I'm just being honest. I can tolerate middle schoolers. I can do middle school ministry, sure. That's fine. I can do high school ministry. I don't mind that. But I really just get along with this age bracket. And I tell people, I'm not here to be your father figure. I just would love to be that kind of bigger, older brother that's just a little bit ahead of you in life, just to kind of give some wisdom. I'm not here to give you all the facts and fix your life, but just to give some guidance when you need it. And it's going to come from God's word, not just my opinion, right? And so I just love talking and being around this age, because I know how pivotal those specific years, and still I'm young, but those years specifically, how pivotal they were. And certain people I can look back on who, man, they were intentional with me. And I get to be that person now. And one thing, one of my personal tenets of one of my whys is to always be available, or be as available as I can, for stuff. Even coming on podcasts like this, all right, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to be available to this age bracket, and I want to show them life is not as bad as people try to make it out to be. When Hannah and I were engaged and we had gotten married and found out we were having Judd, and I mean, just all these other people just talking about, oh, your life's over or whatever. You're having a kid, oh, get ready. Like, I was like, man, no way. Like, I'm not going to live that way. You may have done that. Like, yeah, there's going to be hard times. I'm sure there is. I'm a realist, right? I know there's going to be moments where the month is still there without the money, right? I mean, we face that even now, right? And so, but I want to show these kids, these young adults, these college students, that they're not just kids. They're growing, they're maturing and learning. But I feel like God's gifted me with an ability to have authentic friendship with these young adults and to not just be the cool, hip guy who can relate. Man, I don't care about that. And I pray, I really do. Lord, the moment that I can't relate or talk to them in a way that you'll have me, move me to a different area of ministry. Let me age out, if you will. I don't want to be that guy who's trying to be trendy, talking down to, with these college students. That's not what I want to do. But the beautiful thing is, if I keep it centered on the gospel, it'll never go out of style, right? And so
Amen.
the idea of that too is just being with them. I get along with them. And my why, man, I could just go ahead and start listing off students' names of my why, because they're now in ministry. We've done the premarital counseling. They have healthy marriages. They're welcoming babies into the world and parenting the way that I like. Man, it's the way God designed it. Go on adventures with them. Give them exposure to things. Show them the world at a young age. Be intentional, right? And don't take the world for what it is. Read it through God's lens and make up in your mind what you believe. And don't ride your parents' coattails, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of this world out there that we don't even yet know. The idea that God's grace is so powerful, is so big, that you can live a life of impact because the gospel demands a response. And when we live that way, man, it'll blow our minds, right? I get so excited about the idea of, or the story of one. Sorry, my ADD is kicking in, but one of my favorite stories is when Samson catches the 300 foxes, ties their tails together, and sets them on fire, and they run through. That was one. I just read that again today, and just it's been in my mind all day. But two, just the fact of when the woman who had the uncontrolled bleeding touched the hem of Jesus' garment when he's in the crowd, right? That idea of who touched me, and just the power that he had, the magnitude that Christ has to know that. Right? Or before the man is dropped in from the ceiling, when his friends are like, well, I guess we'll go through the top. I totally think of you, Todd, and JG, like, all right, we're dropping Marco in from the roof, right? And that's the only way we got. Like, they were all about it.
I don't
But
think
the
you could
beauty
lift
that
him.
builds up to that is the faith of these people, man. And just the faith, just the foundation. And we don't get to know anything else about them. We have the Hall of Faith in the New Testament, but we know nothing else about these people. But just to be, man, just where I've been living at lately mentally is just like, Jesus is talking with that Pharisee before he heals the man who's lame. And can you imagine just the stillness in that room before he says, get up and walk? Because he's saying all these things, like, which is easier to do this, right? Forgive your sins or to get up. But just the stillness of just like, oh, no, he's not. Oh, no, he won't. Oh, my God. That. But also just the people in the room who are like, there's no way. Who is it? For real? Just the pin drops of faith that are the sentences that are getting ready to unfold in that room, and then to watch the physical action of that man.
Yeah.
This age bracket, man, is on that faith, that proverbial fence of faith of like, they believe, like in Mark, where the man's daughter, is sick and dying. He says, Lord, forgive me my unbelief, right? Like that idea, like, Lord, I believe, but forgive me for my unbelief. I feel like that's where this generation is. I'm like, Lord, you've gifted me the ability to have relationship with these people. I can go like fly fishing with a guy one day, and I can post up in a coffee shop in another. We can ride go-karts. Like, you've given me so many abilities to do things. I want to be available to use it for your glory.
Yeah.
Because there's such this fence line of faith where they're so close to like, yes, I'm all in. And I think we see that. And you, man, with the politic world, you see it now. Like these young adults coming into politics, they're in it. They're in it for truth. They're in it with teeth, and they're running hard after it. We see it in business. We young adults coming out of college ready to make money. That's what's on their mind. So good for them. Go for it. Be ambitious. Work hard. But if I can catch them the year before they graduate, so they are faith-minded, have put their faith in Christ, knowing that Ephesians 2:8-9, for it is by grace they are saved through faith. It's not of themselves, it's a gift of God, not by works. Can no man boast? So that when they hit that accounting job in New York, or they hit that political intern in DC or whatever, maybe they know now, okay, hey, I'm here, but with purpose, bigger than myself. And I want to make a name for myself. I'm not in a prideful way. I'd like to make a great reputation for Alex, for BJ, and I hope all you guys would, and everybody. Like, we want to make a great reputation for ourselves, not out of pride. Just like Paul, when they see me, I want them to see Christ. Man, when they see that person, they're not just working all the time. They're intentional with what they do and how they do it. And so that's kind of my why. Just like, man, there is impact that walks across every fall and every spring that transfer in, that are new to the area. There's the majority who are not going to get it and understand it, or they're not going to buy in yet. But that's why we keep doing it, is because somebody that I talk to on Wednesday night knows somebody else that needs to hear that, and like the old adage says, just one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread, right? That idea of just, I mean, we have nothing without Christ. And if I can just show and teach and encourage them in a way that honors the Lord, but also is captivating, man, we're going to build some wrecking balls for the gospel. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's not nothing that we're doing. We're just showing them what the text says. And that's why you and I, we've had these conversations so much. Exposit the word. Don't feel like you have to have all these big Bible studies, right? Those are great, but you don't need this packet of information. Just get in the word, and let the word speak for itself and show that. So thankful for you and guys in our state,
Man, yeah, it is a joy. And well, I don't know. You said earlier, you're like, you kind of just, shoot it straight. I can't stand these, like, at the movie sermon series that we're now seeing across all these different churches and whatnot, where they're taking the Grinch, or they're taking the Barbie movie, and they're like, here's what you can learn about the Bible in this, instead of just preaching the gospel, bro, and just give it to them, because it'll do the work itself, like you just said. And I'm thankful that we have pastors like yourself that are standing on the truth in a world where there are wolves in sheep clothing. Right. And just some people that aren't even just false teachers, but just ones that are trying to make a name for themselves, that are kind of standing on the other side of the coin of what you just said. Yes, make a name for yourself, but in that name that you're making, glorify Christ in all that you do. And that's the name that is above all names. And I think that is a thing in this generation, that if, like you said, if we get them and we're able to instill that in their minds, one can only imagine the impact that they can make in this generation for the gospel's sake. So,
well, we were just saying that our generation is the least religious, least Christian, but they're like the most activist-minded generation ever. They want to live for something, so let's give them something to actually live for that's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm seeing too right now is, like, if you invite, majority of the time they're willing to come to whatever it is. You're all right. Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a shot. You may take one or two invitations. You don't have to lay a full gospel service out in front of them, but, like, hey man, we're doing some stuff with some friends of mine at a church. Would love to, if you want to come with us. It's all about how you front load it, right? And so I think generally I'm seeing that, at least with our students that are inviting people. They're like, yeah, I mean, I'll pull up, like, all right, sweet, let's do it.
They're looking for community. Everybody wants to be a part of something. And
that's why I think our midweeks are so valuable. I have conversations all the time with guys. Do we do it? Do we not? Like, for me, it's my front door, man. There's like three components. We can go into this to another time. I'd love to come back and talk about this, but, like, your environment, your programming, and kind of just intentional, like, your personnel. Like, what are those three? How do you build a program, collegiate ministry, around those three things? Because we believe in the gospel and gospel impact, but we also are called to be stewards of what we have and how we use it, and so
Amen.
I think those things are huge, to go into that too. So
I would actually love to have you back on for that, as well as rhythms. If you know, but definitely just talking about rhythms. And I think that's just everybody. And I think our generation, that's one thing you see, like, the discipline mindset. We see everybody doing the 75 hard, or the early morning wake up call, and they're trying to, they want to steward their life and their time and their bodies well. And I respect that. But doing it from a perspective of understanding, like, we are not our own. But
I see a
man,
lot of people protecting their time now, whereas, my dad's generation and others, they would work and punch the clock, hit the overtime if that's what it took and get it. Now it's like, I don't want the extra money. I'm stopping at 5 or whatever. And it blows my mind because I'm kind of caught in the middle where I want to keep working and get the job done and earn money or whatever. But at the same time, I'm like, I want to be with my family too. So I'm caught in the middle of those generations.
right.
But right now, man, I see it like when it's 5, gone, they are out, or 4:30, whatever it is. It's hilarious to me to watch, just the stark difference of that. And so I think too, they're willing to try and willing to be intentional because they are coachable, they're teachable, unlike people think. They're willing to learn, and I think they're eager to learn too. So
Yeah. Anything else?
My last thought is we're going to have him back on to talk about everything you just said, but especially homesteading. Talking about all this raw milk, the chickens, having your own eggs.
I can't wait for January.
I'm so excited for this.
Let's do it.
Because I'm going to start doing that myself now.
We're into micro homesteading, so we're definitely into it.
I'll get y'all set up for. I'm gonna bring him up because I'm gonna bring a team up. Like I mentioned earlier, that Alex does a great job of just coaching the next generation, not only shepherding them, but seriously, man, I've learned so much from you in a matter of less than 2 years, which is crazy to think about that our friendship has developed the way it has. But I'm so grateful for you, your ministry. I'm praying for you weekly, and man, I am just I'm excited to just see the Lord's impact on this generation, and I'm thankful that we get to be a part of it together. So, man, great having you on. If you are watching this, subscribe. We'd love to have you. But grace and peace to all of you. We'll see you next week.